Hey, how's it going? Sorry, I'm just getting set up a little bit here. Hey, how's it going? Hello, hello. Not bad, thanks. Do you have any questions? Thank you, thank you all so much for the support. It's been amazing, and so I decided to, yeah, just kind of go randomly live today as half a celebration for 15,000. Pretty important, or not important, but it's a number that I've been looking forward to for a while, and I hope that I can answer some questions as well. Doing some data structures as I listen to this. Right on. Cool. um, so why are you learning? So what are you learning data structures for? Interviewers were asking all these things about programming and complexity. Yeah, they sure do. Yeah, it doesn't really matter where you go for as long as you're doing something programming, they're probably going to ask that. Where my lesson hit the books. Yeah, not a bad idea. Honestly, I'm a little bit rusty on some of the more complex stuff, like dynamic programming and like some of the graph stuff. But it is incredibly useful for sure. Java has a worth for a data scientist. Um, so Java is an incredibly popular programming language, and it probably will be for a while, even though I don't like it. It will be, Java will be a very popular programming language for a long time because it can run on so many different devices and just because it is fast and yeah, I mean it's fast. It can run a lot on a lot of devices, and it's relatively nice to program. I personally much prefer something like Python over Java, but I mean yes, it still has use as a data scientist just because it is so incredibly popular as a programming language itself. Nonetheless, it'll be a less popular choice because Python is pretty fast, especially for most of the important data science stuff is written in C, and so it is as fast or faster or slightly slower than Java for many tasks like model training and inference. So it's it's not really necessary to learn Java as a data scientist, I would say. Um, but it will open many employers' eyes towards you if you get familiar with Java, just because they are almost certainly using it in their company somewhere, unless they're a startup from the last year or two ago. And not to say that Java's dying; it's huge and will continue to be. Um, yeah. Hi, for the new guys, new people that just came in. Hello. What projects am I currently working on? Well, so funny enough, today is actually the first day of my last term of university, and so I have from today I have 4 months until school is over, And so those are that's the projects I'll be working on, I suppose. And I'm taking time series forecasting, even though I know a lot of that stuff just from reading. But I'm sure there's a lot more to learn. And aside from that, I took a bit of an easy term because I've taken a lot of hard terms before. Projects outside of that. So I've been thinking, and feel free if you think you can do it yourself and you want to. I was thinking of a cool project if you know the game Scrabble, or Words with Friends slash Upwards. There's a lot of different versions of it. But yeah, you make words in a line. And I noticed that there wasn't actually a really good tool out there that where you could take a picture of the board and it would understand exactly what the board state was. And then you could also point it at your current letters, and then you could just feed that into an existent Scrabble solver, basically, where it would do some like backtracking or recursive program or whatever. And then, or I could write that myself if I wanted to, but I'd probably just feed that into an existing algorithm, and then have that return the best word or like the top 10 best words or something like that. Um, so that's one thing I was thinking about, and of course, YouTube is a never-ending project. Okay, so what kind of cloud certificates and knowledge one must have while applying? Okay, so I do have a couple of the cloud ones down below that I happen to like from Coursera. Specifically on the cloud, there are agreed a fair amount of them, and they are generally, offered by Google for Google Cloud, offered by Amazon for AWS, offered by Microsoft for Azure, and that's pretty much what they are. There's some other cloud systems that I like Heroku, but generally they're not as complicated, and you don't get something like a certificate. So to answer that question, there's a couple in the description, and honestly, whatever, just kind of take your pick on whichever cloud system that you happen to like. I'll let you know that AWS is currently the most popular, and so that would probably produce the most yield right now. Nonetheless, I actually don't like it quite as much as Google Cloud. I thought that Google Cloud had less errors, especially with TensorFlow. It just seemed easier for me to get used to it. And that's largely due to Google kind of owning TensorFlow. Um, and but all of them are pretty similar. So okay, hi, hello. I am at FAU. I don't know what that is. Um, the U is going to be University, Florida, Florida University. I'm not sure. Working on masters in AI. If I ever want to collab on some projects. Okay. That's really good to know. Thank you. What projects did you have in mind? Are you working on something interesting? Can data science create an Android? Okay, so there's this thing called TensorFlow Lite that is very commonly used with Android applications. Um, and I was thinking about making a video on that recently. I did TensorFlow Lite on a Fast API Heroku client, and it would be very, very similar to make that run on an Android app. And basically, all that is a deep learning model that is packaged into a very small disk size and just very light for running inference or prediction. And you can put that model, it's just a file, and you can put that on an Android app, or you can put that on a cloud client, and you can run inference on that as long as you use their API. So if you use it on Android, it would be with the Java API or slash Kotlin. And on the cloud, you can. I always prefer to do stuff in Python if I can, because I try my best to stick with just what I know best, and that doesn't you don't have to do the same. It's very nice to branch out, and we were just talking a few minutes ago about is Java useful to data science? Well, this is again, yeah, one of those useful times. Is Java is just incredibly popular, and you need it for some things, especially like Android devices. And so that's one space. But also keep in mind that the internet is generally very fast. Of course, in different areas, it's slower. But for the most part, you can send off data and ask for a result very, very quickly. And so when you are doing something like an Android application, you really have to ask like, is it worth it to figure out to do this on the device with possibly a complicated API? Or is it really easy to just send off a request to the cloud and have this API running on, Fast API, Heroku, whatever you want to use, and that you can have that all written in Python and very quickly get a response back to you. So should you do that in Java? Maybe. I don't know. It's up to you, really. And there's also, of course, lots of other data science mixed with Android applications as well, but you don't actually have to do a lot of it on the device itself. But companies like Google are definitely trying to do more and more stuff on device for Android. So that's how they mainly marketed their new Pixel device. Is it has their kind of TPU tensor processing units in on device now, which are so they're trying to do more on the device to make it a faster response. And yeah, okay, so am I more into data mining or AI engineering? Honestly, this isn't in insults. It's just that these words are kind of very mixed together, and I don't really collect much meaning from data mining versus AI. Um, if you ask maybe a more pointed question on things that I'm interested in, then I might be able to answer that a little bit better. Florida Atlantic University. Okay, I got the first and the last word. Atlantic, I did not know. I was going with Florida Arizona University, but that didn't make much sense. Does data scientists need to know deep learning? My answer is yes. I can actually create projects with ML. Um, so DL or deep learning is just glorified but seriously worth it better machine learning. And so yeah, it's worth it to learn it. And the reason is because sure, you can import a random forest from sklearn and get a pretty good model. Surprisingly, a lot of the time, you can even import a linear regression from, or maybe a support vector machine from sklearn and get a pretty good answer there too. Um, but there is many, many, many domains where deep learning just immediately excels. And so something like computer vision, you need to learn deep learning. Something like natural language processing, nowadays you really need to learn deep learning. As well as the bonus from learning deep learning is that it kind of just um, it doesn't necessarily trump, as in like it doesn't necessarily do better than all other models like random forests and linear regressions. But what it does do is you can actually very easily build those models if you wanted to. Random forest is a little bit different, but you can build a linear regression in TensorFlow very easily as well. And something, if you want to make that linear regression slightly more complicated, you could do that, make it slightly more complicated in TensorFlow. It is actually true that for some reason, I don't know why, if you make a linear regression in TensorFlow versus one from scikit-learn, the scikit-learn one is probably going to do a little bit better. And that's probably just due to the optimizer. But in general, it's very nice because there's these ideas like ridge regression, if you've heard of that, where there's these other ideas like ridge and lasso, where they're just in different ways trying to apply something called regularization, which means putting a penalty on the coefficients of, say, a linear model. And all that does, it drives them towards zero, and there's this value that you can adjust called like lambda or alpha or whatever, and you can drive the coefficients more and more towards zero, which improves your model performance. Probably. It stops it from overfitting, basically. And so it's these ideas, like through regularization and slight adjustments through making neural networks, that you realize, like, often I don't actually have to do the specific scikit-learn stuff. I can just make this model, whether it's a linear regression, some forecasting model, or whatever. You can do all of that once you're comfortable with Keras and TensorFlow. You currently got an opportunity to work on human fall detection using PyTorch. I forget what that means. Does that mean literally like human falling? I'm actually, I'd like you to educate me on that because I would love it. You're very welcome for the answer. How to deploy the BERT model for text classification in Colab using Flask? Well, so you need to, there's, okay, so first of all, there's multiple ways. I suspect you can convert BERT to a TensorFlow Lite model, although I have not done it myself. But either way, on Flask, you have access to Python. And so all you need to do is the Flask piece is it has two main functions really. It's to get data, so you ask the user through HTML, or you can just use it as an API. But I'm assuming you made like a website out of it. And so with Flask, you can say, hey, user, send me some data. Okay, collect that, parse that into like a NumPy array or a TensorFlow, Tensor, or PyTorch, or whatever you want to use. And then after you've parsed the data, well, you just run the model like you normally do. You might want to use TensorFlow Lite to literally make it lighter, like physically smaller and faster. But it doesn't matter what model it is, really. I assume TensorFlow would let that be TensorFlow Lite. You run the model, you get your results, you parse your predictions however you want to. You do probably as much on the server side as you possibly can. Return that back to the user in whatever format you want to, and there you go. So the specifics, I mean, sure, I'm not gonna, not that I could, but even if I could, I'm not gonna say the exact syntax as to how you would get that from the user and parse that. But basically, you'd make if you want to see my Flask API or my Flask tutorial, watch that, and then just the whole time think about, instead of that model that I made, whatever it was, like a linear regression or something like that, instead of that, just think about it as BERT. Or actually, probably even better, the Fast API tutorial. Fast API and Flask are very, very, very similar. I could actually barely tell them apart. And yeah, so I'd watch the Fast API project that I have, and instead of for that one, I made a computer vision model. Instead of that, make it BERT, and it'll be very, very similar. How different is to do data science from a typical Jupyter notebook in an intro course to a big company that uses a cloud system like AWS, Azure, EDC? Thanks and cheers from Bolivia. What a great question. Okay, so I understand the question entirely. I love it. So basically, um, yes, most data scientists start out as, and even me, do a lot of work in Jupyter, or I prefer Google Colab, but really they are the exact same thing. And so you're doing, maybe exploratory data analysis, training a machine learning model, and how does that look different when actually you're thrown into a company with 100 data engineers and 50 data scientists, and the technology stack is obviously not necessarily just you on your computer running in a Jupyter notebook. How does that look different? Well, so I can answer that from a few different perspectives, because I've worked in big companies and I've worked in a very small company recently. So from the big company, they have a lot of data as expected, and most likely they have a ton of information in relational tables. If it's a little more modern, they may use something else. But assume for now it's a bunch of information in relational tables, and you probably would use something like PySpark. So something like Spark to run big data becomes much, much more common when you are working in a big company. They have more data, they need it to be faster. It physically cannot fit in the RAM of your computer, and maybe even not in a configured cluster. Hopefully it can. So that's the main difference, is you immediately need something like Spark, and that's why I try to push on this channel as much as I possibly can to, no, you need to learn Spark, and that's why I have it as the main video on my channel. If you go there, it will be talking about Spark immediately. So learn that if you don't know it already. If you're trying to work in a bigger company, and it's just a really awesome skill. It's really just better SQL, faster and a little bit easier to work with. And yeah, okay, so that's the main difference, I would say, and it would actually look very similar. So if they're using something like Databricks is basically a cloud Jupyter notebook almost, where you are still using a notebook, but it is automatically configured to instead of using like the 8 gigs of RAM on your laptop, it would be using like the combined 256 gigs of RAM on whatever cloud configuration they have. And so it's a notebook, but now you are connected to all of their data systems. You can grab that through, very similar means to how you would on your computer. If you have a CSV, you read CSV. You'll see something more commonly like Parquet files, which is it's just a different file type. But either way, they have a bunch of data and tables, and it just looks, everything just looks slightly more complicated, but I promise you, you will get adjusted into working in a bigger company with that stuff very, very easily. Like it's a quick adjustment. Good question. Hi, Greg. Thanks for all the consistencies and dedication. You're really welcome. I truly appreciate you. I appreciate you a lot, Franklin. That just means a lot to me. Flask or Django for deploying? For deploying, Flask. And the answer is because it's lighter and it's actually meant for that. Um, so in all of my tutorials for Flask and Fast API and Streamlit, I've made like an actual website out of it. But you don't necessarily, sorry, I hit that. You don't necessarily have to make a full website. In fact, Flask is often for just making a simple API, which means you send off information to it and you get back a result, and there's no need for this massive website. Django is more commonly used when you have when you're trying to build this complex website and you don't want to do it in Java in Node.js or anything like Node.js basically. So that's really the reason why Django exists. Of course, you can still use it to make a simple API, but that's more of what Flask is about. Flask is like makes very simple websites, and you could make them more complicated, but that's when you'd step into Django is when it's getting bigger. What is better for data science, R or Python? Actually, and sorry, so for the to that previous question, Flask is also just easier. I think most people would agree that if you read the Flask documentation versus the Django documentation, even though the website's actually a lot better for Django, you can tell that Django's getting you more into this complicated zone that you may or may not want to enter. What is better for data science, R or Python? If you don't know me super well, you will know that well, I'll tell you now that I'm not a huge R fan, and I've used it a lot. I'm actually about to use it today because I'm taking a time series forecasting course at the university, and they love R, but I don't like it as much for almost almost everything. There is occasional times, like maybe an ANOVA table and confidence interval like things that R is a little bit better at. But I will vote Python all the way. And the reason is because we were just talking about this. Uh, People don't really make websites in R. So if you wanted to do, there's this shiny thing, which is pretty much the close piece to it in R. But in Flask and Django, this is stuff that's written in Python because people really like Python. And there's all this sorts of other stuff, just so many libraries in Python because people like coding in Python and it's fast enough. So I would vote it all of the way. You're welcome. You're learning a lot from my videos. I really appreciate that, and I'm very glad to hear that. Thank you. Hello, I completed IBM Data Science Professional Certificate, awesome, and Google Professional Data Analytics and Coursera. That's great. Can I search job with those certificates? So I'm not sure if there's a LinkedIn way to actually search jobs that require or that use that certificate, but I definitely think that would help you out a lot. Also, make sure that you have some great projects on your resume and some other work to stand out. I think those certificates will be very helpful and may be able to get you an entry-level analytics job and something that's a little bit easier than something like an actual data science deep learning job. But those will be very beneficial, and anything that you search out that'll be beneficial for. Any ideas on how to start a project for building a portfolio? Yes, I do. So, on how to start building a project for your portfolio. Well, firstly, if you are trying to build out your portfolio, if you don't have the skills to do something crazy, then by all means, if you have a huge interest in something, even though you don't have that much skill, go ahead and try to do that thing. For me, that was building a Pokemon Android app at the end of grade 12, at the end of high school, and I did not have much programming skills, but I learned so much just because I wanted to build this thing, and so I fought through every day to build that. If you have that feeling about something in particular, I strongly recommend you go for that and do your thing. But what is very common is that you are not incredibly passionate about any particular subject. And by subject, I mean assuming you're still programming, like just a topic. And if that's true, then build up your skills gradually. So watch some beginner projects, watch people do their projects, and try to do less and less of looking up code and more writing your own code. And until you get more comfortable with that, I would kind of keep doing that same thing. But always keep challenging yourself and trying harder and harder. So I see a lot of people getting stuck in that same feeling where you're just doing this one project and you're watching someone do it, and then you watch another project, and it just gets boring, and you're not learning that much. Make sure that you're constantly challenging yourself and trying harder and harder projects, and hopefully you find something that you're just really passionate about and that you want to build out your portfolio. Again, for me, my biggest portfolio piece is YouTube, and that's just because it's nice. Like I'm talking to everyone right now, and I build up tutorials, and it's fun. So I hope that you find something like that if you can. And for actually coming up with a project idea, I really do recommend just thinking about the things that you like, pretending that you're not a programmer or developer or whatever. Thinking about the things that you like, and then how you can build something in code related to that. And it won't be difficult at all, I'm sure. Pretty much everything, every concept that exists has some coding around it already. And I hope that you can build something else around that. What's the best way to create an advanced custom chatbot? Um, it's not really a question that I can answer here. I would kind of just Google that and watch a video on that. It's a very long discussion. What is the best domain for data science? There's so many different ones. Like I can't really say if you're talking about the domains of like say computer vision versus natural language processing versus like forecasting or reinforcement learning. That conversation. Well, personally, I think reinforcement learning is extremely cool, and it's going to take over the world very shortly, and we're seeing some of that, combined with the other ones as well. Computer vision, anything we see, natural language processing, anything we hear or write down. Combining it all together, really, you can solve pretty much every problem that's not just obviously meant for programming, like a website or something like that. So personally, I probably have stuck with computer vision for now, and I'm still branching out and trying to learn everything. But I love them all, really. Can I make a video about MLOps? So I've just never titled anything MLOps. If you want to learn about that, watch the Flask tutorial, the Fast API tutorial, and that'll show how to transfer a model to TensorFlow Lite. That's what the Fast API one does, and then put that on a web app, and then have that deployed in inference and running in inference in real time. And that is really, that's really what MLOps should be. It's just a fancy word. Please make videos on building chatbot. Okay, I will make a chatbot at some point. Domain knowledge is a mandatory. No, what's crazy is that domain knowledge is not mandatory. And I think it works the other way around sometimes, which I mean, if you have a bunch of domain knowledge in a company, and then so a lot of people learn data science to apply that to their domain, and that's great. But as a data scientist, you actually don't really need a lot of domain knowledge. And I can prove that to you by, I promise you, I know very little about lung ultrasound, but I got, chosen first as for a startup at a lung ultrasound company for doing deep learning because I knew the deep learning stuff, I was passionate, and that's really what it took. So you do not need domain knowledge, but if again you are very passionate about a particular subject, then go ahead and just apply the domain knowledge that you have with data science to that, and make something awesome you'll be proud of. Currently working as a Tableau developer. How should I move further to become a data scientist? That's great. I think Tableau is on my learning list. It's just something that I personally haven't had too much interest in. But to move further to become a data scientist, I'm guessing you need to learn deep learning if you don't already. So how to train machine learning models, random forests, linear regression, the more basic stuff, and then into deep learning as much as you possibly can is probably the highest payoff you can get, and just incredibly cool. Okay, should I focus in math or coding? I really think that you should pick whatever you want. If you specify what you want to be learning, then I could maybe give a suggestion, but both are very important. Can you recommend what I want to do or can study next after the completed so after the IBM, yes, I can do that. So my pathway in the description of this live has what I suggest to become a data scientist, and IBM is my the first piece of that. I recommend you follow that pathway and continue to keep learning those things in that order. Of course, there's many different ways to learn stuff, but that's my suggestion. Better data or better model. I've seen that. I think Andrew Ng posts stuff like that on LinkedIn. Should it be about better data or better model? And I always think like I don't know. It's a weird question. I'm not saying that you're asking a weird question. I've seen it a lot of times before, and I never know how to really answer that properly because I don't know what that means. What should be the learning path on how to deploy machine learning model in Azure, where the data source is from a data lake, and how to showcase the result, Flask and Heroku, any learning path for that. Um, so wait, I think domain knowledge is necessary. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I personally disagree. That's okay. What should be the learning path on how to deploy a machine learning model in Azure? So I personally I actually don't know Azure very well. Obviously, I know what it is. I do know Microsoft has a lot of different tutorials. I believe on Coursera, but also I know on their own websites they have a lot of stuff to cover that on Azure. So I would recommend you check that out. I'm probably not the person to ask for specifically deploying on Azure. And it looks like we are at the bottom of our questions. So guys, if you could please, if you want to ask some more questions, that'd be really nice. And I want to again have a moment right now with seriously what's on the board. Thank you for 15K subs. It means so much to me for all the support, and I'm really happy to have hopefully provided some value, some positive value in your lives, and you've definitely provided me with a lot of positive value as well. So I really appreciate that. Online data science course is enough or offline degree? Offline degree is needed and best country to do a data scientist degree. Um, okay, so offline, assume you mean like a university. Is that what an offline degree is? Um, so on online data science courses teach a lot actually. You might be surprised at the difference because I know both perspectives. I'm sure some other people do as well of what the online courses teach versus what the universities teach. I'm about to finish my undergraduate degree at the University of Waterloo in statistics, and they're both good. Both online courses like Coursera and a statistics degree at a university. They both teach really unique concepts that are incredibly valuable no matter what. Of course, as you may have heard or seen yourself, universities are generally a bit more in the theory, and it's not that you abandon that stuff when especially in statistics, because it's probably the most applied math there is. But it's not that you abandon these ideas. It's that a lot of this raw theory is just kind of in you, and it helps you understand stuff a lot quicker. And so they go together very well when you do know the raw theory, and then you see something high level like Andrew Ng's machine learning course, which also goes a little bit more into the like linear algebra and calculus side a bit as well. But especially something like the Udemy courses that abandon a lot of the math and just kind of go straight into the coding with maybe a tiny little bit of understanding the math sometimes. And so they, I think the best combination is going hand in hand, is doing both of them. But I don't think a university slash college degree is for everybody. I don't think it is definitely preferred among many employers right now for something like data science, maybe analytics in particular, which is really just like I'm saying, like an easier than data science role. You don't really need to know deep learning or difficult machine learning stuff. That is opening up a little bit to just having some Coursera degrees, the Google certificate. Google may consider you. Nonetheless, I would say it is difficult without at least like an undergraduate degree to get a job in any of this stuff, just because they have so many different applicants. Um, but the Coursera requirements or what you learn there is just phenomenal. Like for actually applying it to the real world. Um, the engineering machine learning course and then the deep learning specialization. If you take just those, you will learn so much, and it literally applies almost directly to solving these company problems. Like you learn what a convolutional neural network is and how that interprets pictures and can classify them. That is exactly what you have to bring to a job, and that's why I personally don't think that domain knowledge is super important. Of course, if you want to work at somewhere like Tesla, where they're so focused in on solving this particular problem, and they have Elon that's like driving this particular workforce to solve this issue that he really wants to solve, then yeah, you'd probably need some domain knowledge to get in there and to do a good job. But there's so many other examples where they don't expect you to understand the domain super well. They understand you. They hope that you will learn it, and they will be happy to teach you it. Um, but you really just need to understand the core concepts, like linear regression, forecasting, convolutional nets, time series based nets like LSTM. If you understand all that stuff, you can solve so many different problems, even without understanding the domain at all. Um, and as well, if you combine that with understanding the domain, you will do a very good job, I promise. Online, yes. Okay, gotcha. Hi, Arshia. Thank you so much for the congratulations. I really appreciate that. How's it going? How are you? What is the best way to share and showcase open source ML projects? Um, so open source, we'll just call it projects because that means something in particular, which is probably true, but I'm going to just kind of dodge that piece. The best way to show your projects is to, firstly, on your LinkedIn, you need to have that as your project, or maybe if it's super important, you might want to put that in your About section or even in the headline if it's that important. And then, no matter what, you need a link to that, which shows a couple things. If it's code based, you definitely want it on your GitHub. Um, you want a link to your GitHub, maybe a YouTube video to explain, show someone how it works. And very highly preferred is to have something like a web app that they can just click on and they can use it in 10 seconds. Because if you're trying to get an employer's attention, then you need to do that very quickly, or they will just throw you away. And so I'd say a really good way to do that is to have something like a Flask or Fast API web app where they run it, you send them some data, or maybe you make up your own data, and in real time you perform inference and you do whatever the machine learning model happens to do. I have a few examples like the Flask tutorial, the Fast API tutorial, the Streamlit tutorial under my project section, and that is what I think is the best way, aside from the certificates and the university degree and all that other stuff, have an app like that. So advertise it on your LinkedIn, on your resume, of course. Resumes are still a thing, and we're moving away from them a little bit, but they're definitely still a thing, and you should have that as a link in your resume. Describe your project briefly, say how awesome it is, provide a link to it, make them use it, make them see that you did something and you actually know how to deploy it. It doesn't have to be a web app, of course. It can be something like maybe an Android app. I have definitely had employers download Android apps that I've made before, and that really impressed them. Of course, that was for an actual Android job or Android developer job. But anyways, the main point is advertise. Pretend you are a marketer trying to get people to buy your free application and use it and see it and see how beautiful it is. Um, what should I do after learning the basics of programming? If you're trying to become a data scientist, you should see the pathway down below. I'll just call it out briefly. You do analytics and then machine learning, deep learning, TensorFlow, all that stuff. I would do that. What is ML ops and AI ops? It basically just means deploying, and it's what I just talked about a lot. It's pretty much just using it. It can mean a little bit more when you're in companies sometimes about the process of like, okay, we have this machine learning model. How often do we update it? How often do we train? What data do we train on? But for now, I just kind of treat that as, for you, try and make an application you can deploy. So like Flask, Fast API, and that really covers the ML ops stuff. And if you want to use that actual term, then go ahead. I often don't because I just call it deployment and stuff around deployment itself. And normal practice, which is more popular platform choice when machine learning model gets deployed in production, the same model that we build in Jupyter, looking from a job interview point of view. So for deploying, so Heroku is pretty common. AWS and Google and Azure are all very common. Pretty much anything that you have heard of is probably used pretty commonly, and you just have to take your pick on, if you're applying for a certain job, maybe you want to learn AWS, or if you're applying to Microsoft, you might want to learn Azure, or maybe just which one you happen to prefer. I love Heroku in particular. I find it's very, very easy to deploy simple apps and just to show someone that you know how to do this. That's the main point. Some employers prefer that you have like an amazing AWS background. Of course, there's like a million different AWS somethings, AWS this, AWS that. But for the most part, they don't care too much. You really just need to show, at least as a data scientist point of view, as more of a programmer, it doesn't hurt to know all that different stuff. But as a data scientist, the main piece is to just show that you can deploy and make some sort of app, and they'll be pretty happy with that. Given the ML/deep learning pipeline are being automated at very finer levels, do you think the ML engineer position will no more be a niche in near future and end up as an extra tool for every software engineer? Yeah, it's an interesting question because um, basically what went through my mind there was thinking about something like sorting algorithms, and I'll explain that because that probably makes no sense. But it's something that all programmers will be taught early on is something like a bad bubble sort, and then you'll get into the more complicated stuff like merge sort, quick sort, and then you don't really use it that much. It's just kind of done in frameworks and APIs and stuff, and so the same thing will kind of be true about machine learning as well, I think, where it is already to the point where the APIs are incredibly easy to use, and it's something that they're teaching it more and more in schools. I've seen that with our school recently had some CNN and LSTM deep learning courses in both the computer science department and the statistics department, and it is becoming this thing you kind of just learn and is an additional tool to many, many people. And so that's kind of true. Yeah. Congrats for 15K. Thank you. Really appreciate that. Siraj, best country/university to do masters in data science. So that's kind of difficult for me to say. The United States is, probably the most common choice for many people. Canada is up there. The UK is pretty common as well. But there's so many great schools, and don't let your life be super dependent on what school you go to. Although I'll be honest, I agree, having a high prestige university, it's pretty beneficial. So yeah, I would shoot for the common ones that you've heard of. Can you recommend some projects for beginners? I have a video that has the top 5 projects for beginners. I recommend you check that out. Just to quickly say them, I use all the time the stuff that's in Google Colab by default, which is MNIST, handwritten digits, California housing regression. I learned so much from just doing those tutorials because it has classification and regression, which is the two categories of machine learning problems. And I would definitely recommend just doing those over and over again with a linear regression from scikit-learn, a random forest from scikit-learn, a boosting model from scikit-learn, and then all the deep learning stuff. So how can I use all the different layers in neural networks? You can do so many different combinations of that and get comfortable with pandas and NumPy and even Plotly or Matplotlib and PySpark, all of that stuff in just Google Colab very easily. You don't even have to download any data sets outside of it. And of course, you have access to Kaggle as well. You're very welcome. Have you deployed using Linode? No, I've seen that before, but I don't know what that is. Some time ago, I heard about Julia. Yeah, okay. A programming language. Yes, I know. Do you think it's worth learning instead of R? I'm thinking about the future. I already feel pretty confident in Python. Okay, so this is an important discussion. Personally, um, I vote is it's this is maybe a personal preference a little bit, but I highly prefer getting more and more and more confident in Python and just doing multiple, pretty much everything imaginable in Python rather than spreading I think I should learn R now because some people are using R, or I think Julia might be getting picked up, so maybe I should learn Julia. And if you do want to, absolutely, I do not want to pressure you into doing something or not doing something that you want to do for sure. But I find that in particular, there's generally less value in just learning different languages. It's more about being able to do stuff. And you can do pretty much everything in Python, and that's why I stick with it. R has its limitations for sure. Julia, I just didn't like. Like I read a tutorial on it, watched a video or two, and I was just like, this just looks weird. And I don't think I could ever really get super used to it like I am with Python. For example, I kind of know C, C++, Java. Obviously I know Python a lot. I know R pretty well. I read about Julia, and I'm sure there's other languages as well. But I really just stuck with what I think is going to solve the most problems, the quickest for me, and that will be Python for a very long time. So that's my biased opinion. But again, I want to say, like, learn what you want to learn and do what you want to do. I just think there's diminishing value out of that. Quick question. Do you have a tool that you could recommend that could be used for creating reducible, maintainable, and modular data science projects? Are you describing Docker? I'm not sure. So a tool you could be creating reproducible, maintainable, and modular data science projects. No, I don't exactly know what you mean by that. And again, so a couple more people joined, and I really need to say thank you to everybody. Firstly, please ask some more questions if anyone has any questions, as well as thank you so much for everyone that's here and for the 15,000 subs and just for watching today. It means so much to me, so I really, really appreciate that. Okay, like Kedro, I don't know what Kedro is. Okay, we're looking up Kedro. I guess I have a couple things to look up because I don't know. I forget what Linode is. I don't know what Kedro is. Kedro is okay. It's flagging. There's the documentation. Okay, what is Kedro? That's a good question. An open source Python framework for creating reducible. Okay, well, it looks like you copied and pasted for that. Reproducible, maintainable, and modular data science code. It borrows concepts from software engineering best practice and applies them to machine learning code. I don't know what this is, to be honest, but I don't think it's necessary. I'm not sure. Can we share through LinkedIn where you suggested projects in your video? Can we share through LinkedIn? Can you write that? Would you mind writing that again, please, and ask a question? Or I don't quite understand what that meant. Can we share through LinkedIn where you suggested projects in your video? Yeah, I don't know what that means. Um, as a data scientist, when a classification is needed, how the models are decided, say among decision tree, random forest, XGBoost. Great question. Okay, so basically, how do you choose a machine learning model? Well, so it really depends on the problem you're trying to solve for where the intuition starts. And so if you're doing something to do with pictures, anyone that knows deep learning will immediately say you probably want a convolutional neural network, and so your class of models will be limited for a very long time to that space. Or again, something like if you're dealing with language, many people will say the popular stuff like BERT or any of the older stuff like just LSTMs and that kind of thing. So it starts from intuition for sure. For what the problem is, many groups of people working on a problem will say, I think that this particular thing will guide us, will give us the best payoff because we're all, and if everyone in a company is being paid, and we want people to figure out the problem as quickly and most accurately as we can. And so you can't really just try everything. But at the same time, if you're doing something like a Kaggle project where so say you are trying to solve MNIST handwritten digits, how do we say that is, how do we pick the best model? Well, the answer, yeah, it is. You keep trying stuff, and we really don't know. To be honest, pretending that MNIST weren't just pictures right now, I couldn't tell you whether a support vector machine or a random forest, or I can tell you a random forest will do better than a decision tree, or yeah, basically multiple decision trees will do better. But there's so many different models out there, and there's a theorem, I think it's called like the no free lunch theorem or whatever, which is basically saying we don't know until trying it whether one machine learning model will do better than another one. We really don't know. Nonetheless, we cannot spend our time on everything, and so we get a group of people together that are trying to solve a problem. They all give their opinion on, I think that we should do this, I think we should do this, and you kind of take the majority vote, or you all space around what you think is best to try and solve the problem. That's how you do it. Okay, what is my next project? I don't know. I'm working on, no, I don't want to spoil it actually. I'm working on something big for YouTube, a big video, but I don't want to say more. By the way, I am a data science lead at a top 4 banks. Okay, good. Your Flask project is very good. I appreciate that. I highly recommend it for those who just learn data science. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Um, hey, Greg, I have to choose one effective from my Masters of Science from the following. 1, building and mining knowledge graphs. 2, data fusion. I don't know what that is. 3, computational stats. I know what that is. 4, dynamic game theory. Wow. Okay. I mean, this is pretty advanced, obviously, as it should be. Um, I don't really know which one you should pick. Whichever one you think you're most passionate about, I think is the right answer. Um, Thinking of data fusion, I don't know what that means. Do you want to give me a blurb on what data fusion means? 'Cause I don't know. By the way, picking the best model, I use combination of rule base and a combination of models based on the labels I am trying to predict. Yeah, that sounds about right. Okay, message retracted. Bring that message back. No, I'm just kidding. Um, okay, looks like we hit the bottom again. If you have any more questions, yes, keep going. How much longer am I going to go for? Because I do have some stuff to do today. Um, I cannot find my clock, so I'm literally just going to Google the time. Not time in Germany, that will not help me out. Time in Canada would be good. It is 11 a.m. right now. Okay, great. So I'll probably go for another 20, 30 minutes since we got a lot of people here right now. Is learning Keras enough, or would you recommend learning base TensorFlow to understand the low-level concepts better? Keras is fine. There is occasionally reasons why you should go more into the TensorFlow specific stuff, specifically the TensorFlow datasets object. You may hit that one, but even then, I would mostly stick with the stuff that says Keras, and that will make probably all of the machine learning models that you want to make. If you are not happy with what it can do, then honestly, I'd probably say switch more to PyTorch, because that's generally what people do. Is when TensorFlow Keras is too restricted, generally people go to PyTorch. I have you recommend to data scientists not to use one model. Rule based sometimes is better. Rule based. It can be, yeah. I mean, I'll just stay out of it. That's possible. What is gamification? I don't know. I don't know what gamification of data science means. Gonna ask many corporate using blockchain technology, but I heard it as problem. It's a problem to data science. I've never heard that. Is that true? Um, wow. Thank you. That's so nice. Um, Thank you for the donation. I Where is it? Actually, yeah, I'll answer that first. Can you explain what databases should learn? Sure. So basically, they're So there's two main types, which is really just databases started as SQL databases, and they still are like 40 or 50 years later, whatever it is, and they are incredibly common. So of course, you've probably heard of them. You're probably asking, should I learn MySQL or should I learn SQL Server or should I learn, just SQLite or whatever? And my answer to that is always, unless you are really trying to work at a particular company, at a particular job that has this requirement, then just worry about getting good enough at SQL and picking one of the database systems because there is so many different ones. Even in once you get into a company, you'll be amazed at how I think in the 4 or 5 or 6 whatever jobs I've been in with databases, they all seem to have something that's a little bit different. And so nobody expects you to be able to just have memorized all of these different database systems. Like, oh, do you know all the MySQL stuff? Do you know all the SQL Server stuff? No, what they expect you to know is SQL itself. And if you can do that, like select, where, join, uh, all that stuff, group by, if you can do all that, then they are probably happy with that. Unless you are going into a role which is actually configuring databases and really going into the design of those. In that case, you may want to learn a particular one. But assuming that this channel is for data science like people, then I just really recommend that you get strong at SQL and PySpark or at least some type of Spark. And I think that will give much more payoff than learning all of the different SQL based systems. If I was to pick one, you know, learn the free one. Okay, so just gonna ask. No, I already read that. The joint analysis of data from multiple sources. Oh, is this the answer to what data fusion is? It sounds like it. Or is this the gamification one? This is data fusion. Okay. The joint analysis of data from multiple sources, modalities, that allows achieving information slash knowledge not recoverable by the individual ones, like signals from sensors slash cameras. Sounds amazing. This is just a domain that I'm probably not able to answer, to be honest. It sounds very specific and something that I haven't really touched. So I'd say take your pick. I appreciate I know what I did. I asked for a blurb on data fusion and you gave it to me, and I appreciate that. But I don't have much help. Thank you. Keep up the good work. I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. Hey bro. Hey bro. I'm doing undergrad in mechanical engineering. Nice. But learning data, deep learning and machine learning, that's awesome. I want to do research in AI application in healthcare. I just did that and I really loved it. So I highly recommend. What should you do? Well, you are in a great opportunity to do that because mechanical engineering, obviously, you understand how stuff moves, and a lot of people don't. In fact, it's something that I need to learn a little bit better. But the combination of that, along with deep learning, is phenomenal because you understand how the technology actually works, and then you're able to code it as well. For in particular, the healthcare industry, how I got into it was simply apply to healthcare companies that required deep learning knowledge. And there you go. I was a good fit, apparently. So that could work for you. It is difficult for sure to just kind of go on the internet and make some phenomenal project that is involving healthcare. Like you can't just make this study where you got 100 people to smoke and you saw their results or whatever. That's difficult, and that's why these healthcare organizations are, a lot of them keep their data sets. Some of them make them public, but a lot of them keep them private because it is really what the step that they have ahead of everybody is that they've been gathering data for so long. And it's just that's really what you need in healthcare is data, and you can't just get it like scraping off Google Images like you can for a lot of different stuff. So, anyways, that a bit of a tangent aside. How you need to get into that? Well, you do need to show your passion for it, and there's still lots of stuff that you can do. More so that problems that people have solved already. If you go on Kaggle, there are healthcare data sets, like stuff like heart disease. And I'm sure there is stuff like analyzing X-rays to make classifiers whether this bone is broken or categories categorize the broken bone or whatever. So there's lots of stuff that you can do. I don't think it would be revolutionary. I'd be impressed if it was, but that doesn't really matter. There's a lot of stuff you can do still to show that you're passionate about that. Um, okay, hey, just wanted to drop by. I appreciate that. Oh, hi. Say hi and thank you for doing this live stream for us. Killing it, brother. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm trying to kill it as much as I can. SQL or no SQL, which one to learn? Right. Thank you for actually reminding me about that because I did not finish that thought of yeah. There's two main categories: SQL and no SQL databases. And right now, definitely as a data scientist, you would get more payoff out of learning relational databases, but you will be open to pretty much all companies if you do learn both the different types, like graph databases versus SQL databases. It would be very beneficial. If I was to pick one, I wowould still say relational databases for sure. AutoML, a nice tool that will help data scientists slash ML engineers, or a tool that will replace them. I don't think it'll replace some things, but it is tricky to automate all of this stuff. Of course, you can automate simple stuff. Like, which pre-processing function should I use to make a machine learning model? Should I standardize the data? Should I normalize it? Blah, blah, blah. You can automate that very easily, and that would be great. But there's still a lot of stuff that we really are going to need a lot of people to solve these problems on. Because what deep learning is really doing right now is solving interesting problems, and that's why it's very closely associated with artificial intelligence, because it's making artificial like it's making intelligent machines. And so yeah, you can automate some of this stuff, but we still are going to need these really smart people to really push it, because it's not like Tesla is not going to start relying upon automated machine learning that automatically figures out every single thing to make a car just not hit people and stuff like that. Obviously we're going to need some crazy intelligent people to be working on that type of problem. So it will continue to get better, and I think definitely in the area I said at the beginning, which is like what pre-processing function I should use, that kind of stuff, I think that will start to die out a little bit. For example, I don't even think about what optimizer to use when training a deep learning model. There's a bunch of them, like stochastic gradient descent, like RMS and Atom Optimizer, but I just always choose Atom because I know that it's going to do a fine job. And so stuff like that, yeah, that'll be automated for sure. I'm from Egypt. Cool. I need to get a job in data science, but it is hard because there are a few opportunities knowing that I think I have the right skills. What is your advice? Okay, so if you need a job, like if you actually need a job, then maybe studying deep learning for the next year or two, whatever, isn't the smartest thing to do. Obviously, I'm not going to speak for like your financial situation or whatever. I'm just trying to say that maybe it's true that next week you're not going to randomly get an amazing data science job. You might, you also might not. And so what should you do? Well, you should, I know that you know your financial situation better, but you need to make sure that that's okay, and you need to learn as much as you can while not hurting that. And so if it's on the evenings and you really want this job, then you need to work evenings and go on Coursera and spend an hour a day or 2 hours a day learning this material, trying to apply it, make projects, get the certifications if you think that would be helpful. Some of them would be. Um, and yeah, just keep learning, just keep grinding, and always make sure that you're in an okay situation. Um, okay, do I have any data science interview prep videos? Do I have any data science interview prep videos? Arshia, so yeah, we had that one from a while ago. I made that one from a few months ago. It's actually going to be one that that's a big video that I've been thinking about recently. It's a lot of interview prep stuff, so that's a good idea. Um, there is a video, if you scroll back on my channel, it should be within the first like 20 videos, I would think. That's really good for prepping for interviews in particular, as long as pretty much all of this stuff, any project, any tutorial like train validation test sets, overfitting, underfitting, all of that stuff are very, very common questions to be asked on interviews. And so I would learn that as much as you can. Yes, I feel like, thank you for keep asking that because I feel like I missed it. Is Java required for machine learning? Oh, you're welcome, Marcia. Um, is Java required for machine learning? No, it's not required. I I actually answered at the beginning of this whether Java is worth it or not, and it's not a bad thing to learn. It's a programming language that covers a lot of different concepts, or a lot. It's deployed on a lot of different devices. So if you want to make an Android app, it's good. If you work in many companies, they will have Java code, and there's not really a way to convince them strongly otherwise because there's just so much code written in that already. So of course, Java would be a very important skill to learn, but it's not necessary by any means. Most data companies are at least, so most companies have a stack of technologies, and Java is very popularly one of them for running, you know, a lot of different things, as well as JavaScript. Pretty much every company is going to use JavaScript in one way or another. But but any data company that's trying to utilize this stuff has generally a Python environment. So something like Databricks, where you do all of your data work in Databricks and Python, or even some companies still use Jupyter notebooks and they present their findings. You do work on your computer and you present your findings, and then you try to implement that into the application itself, which may be in Java, it may not be. It's not a bad idea. I don't think it's necessary though. Make videos for Kaggle competition. Yeah, so I actually need to do that more. It's actually very simple, just submitting to Kaggle. Well, it's simple in the sense for me, like that. It's just a little bit extra work to submit to them. It is a little bit confusing at first on submitting to Kaggle, and I think they need to do a little bit better job at making that even easier to understand and run. I think some of the tutorials I found were just even outdated and weren't quite right. But sure, I'll submit to Kaggle competitions. Do I reckon? I love it. I love the word reckon. Do I reckon I could do a transition from a business analyst role to a data scientist one? Yes, it's a natural progression. Honestly, I think it's just a business analyst generally implies you know the particular business that you're working in, you know that domain pretty well, and you probably use some common analytical tools like Excel, and maybe getting a little bit more modern as well, as all companies are trying to do. And a lot of people are trying to do this as a business analyst. A lot of people are realizing that this data science stuff isn't incredibly hard to learn. There's a lot of stuff. If you want to go the full pathway and understand everything, then it's a lot. But also, if you're already in a business analyst role, you can just kind of take the Coursera courses, just learn machine learning, learn how to make this deep learning network. You don't have to understand all of the code, all of the math behind it. And I think it's a natural progression that will greatly increase your if you are trying to get like just kind of upgrade to a different role within the company or move around companies. I think it's a pretty natural progression. Will I be hosting a 15K party? Honestly, I was kind of treating this as the 15K party. Um, a party, yeah. I mean, I did have other parties previously, which were clearly more parties than this one. This is obviously an Ask Me Anything, as I have that there. Um, but yeah, maybe not. Things are gonna get busy pretty soon, so I'm not sure. How can I find data science and AI internships? You find these internships like anything else. So if you're in a school and you have an internship program, that's how I got most of, actually all of mine. But that's not how, even in my school, in the internship program, a ton of people still did the conventional approach to get internships, which is go to the LinkedIn job board, see generally they have internship or intern or internship or something or co-op student or something like that in brackets, and they should be there. You can apply to them. Uh, Internships are slightly less common to be found on company websites themselves, but generally any big company will still have an internship section. Some of them were actually closed off, like I think Twitter and I think even Tesla were closing off a lot of their internship roles during the COVID stuff, but I think a lot of them have come back and are continuing to come back, which is good. But really, the conventional approach for finding jobs, you can find internships through. Um, I saw your LinkedIn post about assigning projects to you. Yes, can I? Yes, thank you. I've been meaning to talk about that, and that's a good opportunity. So, for those of you that don't follow me on LinkedIn, firstly, go do that. And I made a competition, which is basically you have until the end of January to submit the best project that you can. So that means you can submit it to either beginner or intermediate. So beginner is really like if you're just starting out in data science and you're learning along the way what a machine learning model is and how to deploy these, not even necessarily to the stage of deploying, but that would be great. At least making some sort of machine learning model, or not necessarily that, maybe a Plotly application that shows some graphing stuff, anything, any sort of interesting analytical project. You can submit that to either beginners or intermediate. All you have to do is just make it public to me somehow, just public to me. Message me on LinkedIn and send me that link. So that could be a Colab notebook, that could be a file as long as it's safe, and preferably, so probably more common for the intermediate stuff, it would be a link to like a deployed Heroku app where I can click that and see your work. And whoever submits I think I'm taking the top 5 from beginners and the top 5 from the intermediate level. Anyone can submit, and I will make a post, or actually I'll make a probably live similar to this. I'll demonstrate your work on YouTube here. I'll make a LinkedIn post about it, and I forget, I said something else I believe I would do on the LinkedIn post as well, and I'm forgetting right now. But go check out that post. If you, I'll try to find it later. I'll put the link to that post in the comments here, so you can find it later if you're looking. I should have made a post or a video or like a post on that on YouTube itself, but I didn't. Anyways, yeah, I look forward to anyone submitting to that. Okay, nope, nope. Thanks, Arshia, for bringing that up. I appreciate that. I hope you get 30K subs soon. um, Doubling is always a tough one. Um, Doubling will always be a tough one, other than 1 to 2 and 2 to 4. Um, but I really hope so too. I really appreciate that. And I've been going for less than a year now. Actually, it's really approaching a 1 year celebration because I think I started this channel. It was like if you go to my about section, it'll say way earlier than that. But I think I only started this um, in the middle of February, basically. So less than a year, 15,000 subs on first year is fantastic. 30K it might take another year. I hope that it doesn't. I don't know. Maybe it takes 2 years. Maybe it slows down. I hope not. But thank you. I appreciate that so much. Um, Is data science track in data camp? I'm not familiar with the data camp stuff. That's something I'll look into in the future to possibly say on my channel. Whether that's good or bad, I don't really know. I'm sure it's fine. I don't think it's bad. I just think there's a lot of competition. Are Kaggle competitions important for your CV, or are they just for practice? Should I add them to my CV? You should add them to your CV if you have nothing else. But as long as you have something else, they don't belong there, basically. Unless it is an important competition. I'm taking that question to be if it's like, MNIST handwritten digits or California housing or something like that. You, no matter your score, I don't think it really matters. I don't think that's going to boost your resume very much. But if that's all you've got, if you're just learning this stuff and you're constantly improving your CV, and it's just good practice to, constantly make your CV better and better as you learn stuff, then yeah, put them there. There's no shame in that. But also, no, don't expect employers to be amazed that you can solve the beginner projects here. I wouldn't expect them to be. But again, it doesn't hurt. Maybe make a short for the competition. Yeah, I should probably make a short announcing that competition. That's a good idea. Nice and quick for me, and quick for everybody just to hear about that in 30 seconds is not a bad idea at all, Arshia. I agree with that. Do you have any good sources on multivariate time series forecasting? Yes, I have a video called Multivariate Time Series Forecasting. It is the extension upon a univariate and more simple time series forecasting in my Python projects. If you go to my homepage, They both should be there. The time forecasting videos, I would check those out. It uses deep learning. Thank you very much. You're very, very welcome. Okay, I think I'm going to call it because I actually have some important things to do today. But thank you everyone for stopping by. If you haven't dropped a like on this stream, I'd really, really appreciate that. It helps out the video for later. And thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you a ton for the 15,000 subs. This was awesome, and I hope that I answered some interesting questions just now. Okay, so thank you everybody. I will see you later. Java and ML. I think you'll like Python better. I did Java. I learned Java first too. I like Python better. You're very welcome. All right, I'm gonna end it. Thanks, guys.